Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe along with Gerry Hamilton for this edition of the recruiting breakdown. We'll be heavy on defense, specifically the secondary. But Gerry, before we get into anything, who's our sponsor for this episode?
Yeah, it's Mark Saunders. He is the sole sponsor of the recruiting breakdown. He's the man. He is, look, when it comes to protecting all your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? I got some great news. If you're in Austin or Round Rock areas or the entire state of Texas, that's Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders. He's the only insurance agent you'll need. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and even that ATV. If you got one of those too, call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands? You'll be in great hands with the over 35 years of experience that Texas alum Mark Saunders brings to the table. Again, if you're looking for someone local in Austin or Round Rock and the entire state of Texas, give him a call, 512-218-8571, and do what so many other On Texas Football family members have done. That's called Mark Saunders for all your insurance needs.
And thank you, Mark, for sponsoring this edition of the Recruiting Breakdown. Gerry, let's get to the secondary. We'll get to Duane Akina in a minute. He's obviously been the hot topic of discussion here on the channel and over at ontexasfootball.com. But Mark Orphey, coaching cornerbacks, we've been reporting for a while that that's what he was going to be hired to do. Sark made that official last week. Where is he focusing his efforts right now, Gerry? We know the in-state corner crop, but out of state too, because at Rutgers he had done a pretty good job of evaluating and developing corners at Rutgers.
Yeah, so Mark Orphey was originally from North Shore, Houston area. Then moved up the coaching ranks, and obviously at Rutgers he recruited he recruited Florida and Georgia for Rutgers. That Shiano sent him down there. Well, he made his first offer last night. And even though he's from Texas and he recruited Georgia and Florida, it wasn't from any of those. It's Samari Matthews out of Huff High in Cornelius, North Carolina, a little bit north of that Charlotte area around Davidson. Samari Matthews is a kid who has 3 official visits set. As we watch Samari Matthews here, 6'1", 180, one of the top 7,500 prospects in the country, good ball skills, great reactive quickness, and just reactions in general at the corner position. But he has official visits set with Clemson the first weekend in June, Florida State June 6th through 8th, and South Carolina the 20th through 22nd. And that's a pretty good list if you're a DB. I mean, the guy recruiting you at Florida State's Pat Surtain. Okay, pretty good player. Son's pretty damn good. And then Clemson, really good defensive back coaches there. And then Torian Grin, that defensive secondary staff, do such a good job at South Carolina. So those are the 3. Now that Texas is offered, that's the 3 competitors. That was his top 3. I now believe he has a top 4, and Texas is going to be included in that. He has June 13th through 15th window open for an official visit. And I'll be honest, right now I'd be surprised if Texas doesn't get a visit. He really wanted a Texas offer. And for Orphey to make this his first offer at Texas tells you how highly he thinks of this kid and how highly Texas thinks of this guy. And again, it's state of North Carolina, that Charlotte area. That's 5 offers, 4 defensive linemen, and now Samari Matthews made since mid-January. But look, this is not going to be the last offer at corner for Texas out of state and probably not in state. So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. He's looking at guys in Florida, looking at guys in Georgia. Obviously, he signed a 4-star prospect out of Warner Robins, North Side, at Rutgers in the 25 cycle, and beat some SEC schools for that kid. And so we know some of those areas. He's going to recruit North Shore High School. He's going to recruit that Pearland in the Galveston County area as well, probably that same area that Blake Gideon had while at Texas. But his first offer goes to North Carolina. So that is 3 corners right now, Jeff, and we're about to get in the in-state guys that I think are really high in prospects that Texas is after in 26.
Yeah, Gerry, it probably isn't going to change, even though you've changed corners coaches with Mark Orphey coming in. I've got to think Jermaine Bishop Jr. and Jalen Lott both probably pretty high on his board.
Yeah, look, we've talked about Jalen Lott a lot at nauseum. Obviously, James Lott, his dad's a Texas legend. Jalen Lott is one of the top 40 level kids in the country. He's got offers from everywhere. He's going to officially visit Texas June 13th. We're going to focus on Jermaine Bishop Jr. from Willis because it's a fun highlight tape, first of all, aren't they all? But Jermaine Bishop is really interesting because he's just as good at wide receiver as he is corner. He's really talented in the return game as well. He's making an official visit June 20th, and I think Texas is the favorite for Jermaine Bishop at Willis High here. But I do think people in his circle think corner may be his best long-term position. And you see, he's just a baller, man. He's just a football player. He's a touchdown maker. He's a big playmaker. He's a momentum changer in games. But built like a South Florida kid. He's 5'11", 155, 5'11 and a half, 155. He's going to have to put on some armor, but that's going to come, and I think he'll do that pretty quick at the college level. But this is a guy that, look, I think Texas loves him because we give a lot of attention to Jalen Lott, but Jermaine Bishop, Jeff Howe, is a guy that Texas really loves, and both those guys are coming in for visits. So now we're about to see how much more Orphey's going to extend this corner board at Texas now that he's gotten into Austin. He's getting his feet wet, really going through the evaluation of these corners with the in-house recruiting staff at Texas and with Sark and those guys and the defensive staff. So we'll see how much bigger the net is cast at corner. But right now, the three guys that I know they're focused on, they're all big-time play. I mean, look at that play right there, Jermaine. I mean, his quarterback was DJ Lagway, right? So he's accustomed to catching the football. And this is junior stuff. He played with DJ Lagway 2 years prior from a Power 4 quarterback. So he's got tremendous ball skills. I watched him in person as a sophomore playing corner and playing wide out, but he just has the ability to make people miss, Jeff. And it's going to be interesting to see how much this corner board expands in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and Jerry, we talk about Jalen Lott's athletic background, obviously, so because it's there. But if the name Bishop and a kid from Willis stands out, Jermaine Bishop Jr. has got those same athletic bloodlines.
Yeah, his uncle was the first guy that ever had the arm strength to throw it out of a stadium, probably, right? I mean, Michael Bishop is his uncle, who's now the head football coach at in the Houston area, to private school, but obviously the Kansas State All-American. I think he finished third in the Ricky Williams Heisman year, behind him, Ricky and Cade McNown, maybe, or Tim Couch. I guess it was. But look, Michael Bishop. His father, Jermaine's father, was the running back on those teams. Obviously, Michael Bishop is his father, Jermaine Bishop's brother, and he was the running back, and Michael Bishop was the quarterback. But, yeah, they got it in the bloodlines. They've stayed at Willis. Then families always stayed at Willis. But a guy that I just think is one of the better players in the state and the country from a playmaking standpoint. He's just elite.
Michael Bishop was second in that Heisman voting, but still, that is one athletic family. The Bishops are, and two really good corner prospects. Jerry, let's move to safety. Yeah. And, we've been talking about Duane Akina, and the nostalgia is fun, and we get a little insight from somebody like Rod Babers, who played for him, and to find out what Duane Akina is all about. But Duane Akina is coming into the job at Texas in his return to we talked about the depth and the talent at the safety position in the state. Jerry, it's as good as it's been in a while.
No, it is. And it's a deep year at safety in the state of Texas. There's 3 offers in Texas right now that I really think to know at the safety position. Chase Calicut at North Shore, he's coming in June 13th. He's more of that hybrid safety, may grow into a linebacker. Now, he's a big, long frame kid. It's going to be if he plays safety, it's going to be about 215 pounds. And there's a chance he could be 230, even 240 long term. I think Texas and Oregon are going to battle out there. Alabama's in the mix, maybe LSU for Calicut. But then we're going to talk about a couple of guys here, and we're going to start with Donovan Webb, Jalen Lott's teammate at Panther Creek. Donovan Webb, Jeff, when I was out this year going to schools, he was the best junior safety as a player I saw in person. This is a guy who's had over 110 tackles the last 2 seasons as a safety in high school football. That's an amazing number for a safety. I mean, you just don't see that very often. A guy that's probably going to have close to 350 tackles as a high school football player playing the safety positions. That's just not – you don't see that very often. But here you see his playmaking. You see him return. I think he had 4 kick or punt returns for touchdowns this year. He played wide receiver. He's got really good ball skills. I mean, he adjusts the ball to the ball in the air. Very instinctive player. His dad was a college baseball player at Kansas State. Grew up with Michael Huff, by the way, in Irving. Michael Huff actually married into the family, into that family on Donovan Webb's mom's side. But he's a kid who likes Texas a lot now. He's got Ohio State. He's got Oklahoma. He's got all the big time offers, LSU, Michigan, you name it. This is one of the more ranked juniors in the country, Jeff, but one of the absolute best players I saw this year in high school football in Texas. I mean, you just don't see guys with this much production very often.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, one of the things about Duane Akina that a lot of people have asked is, hey, what has he done since he left Texas? And I think it's worth noting that if you just start looking at the volume of recruits, it might not stand out from his time at Stanford. But Jerry, Stanford under David Shaw, they were really, really particular about the way they offered, who they offered. It was a really long process. I remember I was with Duane Akina. We were at Houston Heights at the same time when Jalen Green was coming out as a prospect, and Georgia had actually just left that day and had offered Jalen Green. And we were assuming that he was going to get that Stanford offer, but Duane Akina explained the process that no, it's got to go back and you got to go through these channels and this. But Jerry, the guys he did get at Stanford, he produced pros at Stanford.
Paulson Adebo. When I was at ESPN Under Armour, we had him in the Under Armour game. I went to see him at Mansfield High. Was one of the very best corners in America in that class, and went on, obviously still in the NFL and playing at a high level. I can't remember if he's a first or second round pick. Jeff, you might, but it was one of the two. But a tremendous player out of Texas that picked Stanford over Notre Dame, Texas A&M. Obviously in an academic battle. I think Florida may have been on his list as well. But yeah, I mean, Duane couldn't be a volume recruiter at Stanford, to your point. But when he identified him, he won some big battles. And again, he won one in Texas that people didn't think he'd win. But Paulson Adebo, huge in the academics, was a true student athlete and went with Stanford, and it ended up paying off for him.
Jerry, we talked about recruiting areas with Mark Orphey. Any idea where Duane Akina will work out of state specifically? We know he's familiar with the state of Texas, but out of state. And then also as we transition to offense, where Chad Scott might be focusing for Texas.
Yeah. So I'll be surprised if Duane Akina works east much in terms of hitting schools. He'll go see some guys, right? Everybody does. But I think the bulk of his recruiting, as you said, is going to be Texas, Arizona, Southern California. Probably not in that order. It's probably Texas, Southern California, then Arizona. Maybe he hits Las Vegas if there's a safety prospect, Jet Washington at Bishop Gorman. He's going to tag team a lot of recruitments with Johnny Nansen, in my estimation. They've worked together. They're very close. They have homes in Hawaii. They have a great camaraderie and communication and continuity between those guys. I think we're going to see him and Johnny Nansen work some of those defensive back recruitments in Southern California, maybe even up in the Las Vegas and Arizona. Obviously, with Duane coaching at Arizona, Johnny Nansen coaching at Arizona. But Duane, if you look at his history, where he signed players, it's been Texas, it's been in California, and he's actually signed some really good players south of LA in the San Diego, in that area as well, which Texas hadn't spent a ton of time in San Diego. So maybe you see Duane Akina just hit some schools in San Diego while he's out there recruiting defensive backs and giving an assist in some other positions.
Yeah, Texas once upon a time got a running back from San Diego out of Patrick Henry High. I wonder if that guy ever panned out or not. But Jerry, we talk about Chad Scott. Not only where is he working, but CJ and I talked about it a little earlier this week on the channel. Starting to reach out to the running backs, made contact with Derek Cooper, made contact with Javian Osborne. So similar to Mark Orphey, trying to make sure you get your board set before you go out on the road in the spring and obviously summer official visits. How are things going with Chad Scott right now?
Yeah, I think good. And I think we're going to see him recruit Florida, obviously Texas, Florida, Georgia, and he's going to be big in North Carolina for Texas. His 3 years at North Carolina, really learning that state, and he's recruited North Carolina. At West Virginia, you have to recruit all those areas at West Virginia, at Kentucky. So he knows the state of North Carolina really well, and I think he's going to be big in identifying guys more so than recruiting a running back in that state, which is not going to happen a lot of times if you're at the University of Texas. I mean, there's been some good ones, Todd Gurley, et cetera, come out of that state, but it's going to take one of those guys to move off from Texas and the SEC region. I think you're going to see him there, but he's a Plant City, Florida guy. He's recruited Florida his entire life. He's recruited a lot in Georgia. He's recruited Texas. He's a guy that fits perfectly for where Sark wants to take this recruiting in Georgia and Florida, and replacing the schools that Tashard Choice in the areas Tashard Choice really helped Texas, which was the Atlanta area, Orlando, I-4 corridor. Those are the same areas that Chad Scott's had a lot of success over the years at stops at Kentucky, North Carolina, and West Virginia, especially North Carolina. He won some big recruitments in the Orlando area to Popka High, and then at Clearwater Catholic, and a couple of those areas while at North Carolina. He beat SEC schools on some kids there that were ranked 4-star prospects, and one that was an Army All-American back in the day, and another offensive lineman that was all ACC player for the Tar Heels. So I think those are the areas we're going to see him work. As far as the running backs in this cycle, Xavier Crowell at Jackson, Alabama, Derek Cooper at Chaminade Madonna, Javian Osborne and KJ Edwards in Texas. We'll see. Does he make a move on Amari Latimer? Amari Latimer had of all the backs we've talked about, he probably had the strongest relationship with Tashard Choice. We'll see, does he make a move there? And then with Chad Scott, the other thing is he might have somebody he really liked that he thought was under the radar. Let's see if another offer or two comes this spring at that position.
Jerry, real quick, you talked about Chad Scott and his experience in North Carolina from when he was a staffer there, also played there. So he knows the state really well. But the Carolinas, period, like you think about South Carolina, you think about Jadeveon Clowney, Alshon Jeffrey, AJ Green. Even Texas went and got Poona Ford out of the state of South Carolina. But the Carolinas all the way up to the DMV area, that's an area that's always intrigued me. Jeff Banks spent a lot of time during the contact period in the state of North Carolina. Is that an area where you think Texas probably could go to? Not that I'll borrow a term from Sark, not that they'll major in recruiting in the Carolinas, part of the East Coast, but they'll dabble in it.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to see Texas recruit North Carolina more. Now, the question is it just going to be the Charlotte area, which is easier for a team that nationally recruits? Because the thing about North Carolina in doing this nationally, I've made the drives. When you start getting east of the Research Triangle and you head towards Greenville, which has a lot of under-radar, talented players, that's a hike. But then you have to go all the way to the coast in Carolina. Now, you get to Havelock in some of those areas who have produced tremendous football players over the years. That is all-day recruiting events. I mean, that's a lot of time on the road. Maybe you helicopter around, but it's very important to know those areas. Those small towns in North Carolina, in the eastern half of that state, if you look up the history of the state of North Carolina, almost all of those towns and cities have produced defensive linemen. Bobby mentioned this on Coffee and Football Tuesday morning. Highest defensive lineman in the NFL hit rate per capita is from the state of North Carolina. There's a bunch of big body dudes that can run. And you know what? They all play basketball in the basketball state growing up too. They all have really good feet. So that's the key, is knowing. So you can't waste time. There's just not time to waste time on the road. Recruiting is so different now. Yeah. So having Chad Scott's going to be very valuable there. You have to know when they are, where they are early. Then you have to know, is it worth your time? Because it's hours spent traveling to get there and on the road. But that state, defensive line-wise, man, I mean, you can go through many years. We should have Mac Brown on the show. He'd name 30 guys in 15 seconds that were NFL players that he recruited out there.
Well, Jerry, one more time before we're out of here, why don't you let everybody know one more time about Mark Saunders?
Yeah, Mark Saunders is the Texas All-State agent and the sole sponsor of the Recruiting Breakdown. He serves the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas. He's the only insurance agent you'll need. Give him a call today, 512-218-8571. With over 35 years of experience, you'll be in great hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders. I will sign off on that one, 512-218-8571.
And not just here on the channel, but if Jerry's dropping knowledge, it's going to be at ontexasfootball.com. And right now, with the promo code OTFOG, that's OTFOG, get over to ontexasfootball.com. $49.95 will get you a year of access to ontexasfootball.com. You're not going to want to miss it with a massive summer coming up in recruiting. Obviously, what's going to go on in the fall with year 2 in the SEC with Sark. And Jerry just keeps on rolling. You don't want to miss out on a minute of things on a 40 acre. So again, OTFOG is your promo code at ontexasfootball.com, $49.95 for the year. Jerry, anything else before we sign off?
No, we're at 30 official visitors. I think that number could creep up to 36, 37, 38 by the end of the weekend. We had 41 official visitors last June. I think we're going to zip past that. I think we're going to see Texas creep into the high 40s for official visits in June. But again, something always remember, the last class at Texas, the 25 class, the number 1 ranked class, I believe I'd have to go back and look exactly because somebody will count it up and tell me I'm wrong by a player. I think there were 8 or 9 players that signed with that class at Texas that never were on campus prior to the spring before June official visits. And in the case of a Justice Terry, not until a senior season, and a couple of other guys. Grayson Littleton was a spring guy. Myron Charles, Josiah Sharma, Jamie French. So we had the January 20 Junior Day. We have the 30 official visitors. I don't think the list of players offered by Texas is complete, especially with the coaching changes at running back and corner and maybe even safety. I think we're going to see this list expand, but I'm expecting high 40s for official visitors in June right now.
All right. We will keep you updated here on the channel and at ontexasfootball.com. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Recruiting Breakdown. For Gerry Hamilton, I'm Jeff Howe. And until next time, hook 'em.